Hello, everybody. It is Sunday night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Joined for our Steelers post-game show here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network by Paul Zeise after a 13-6 Steelers win against the Broncos at Empower Field at Mile High. Paul, it was a game that I think started off with some highs for this offense, and I think we were building toward one narrative of, hey, this offense looks great. You can't take Justin Fields out. And then things kind of ebbed away in that second half. And now I wonder where it leaves us. You got one touchdown in 2 weeks. You've seen some good things, but you've also seen a pretty ugly half today. So what's your reaction to, I guess, the offense in totality? Obviously, a dominant day by the defense, but I just want to get your thoughts on the offense here at the top.
The biggest difference between the offense this year and the offense last year, Adam? The defense is a hell of a lot better, and so they only have to score 13 points to win. Last year, they might have lost this game. Offensively, there's two ways to look at this, okay? There's two ways to look at it. The first is, they got a 7-0 lead and basically decided to say, I don't believe Bo Nix can get 7 points against our defense, so we're going to be ultra-conservative and play not to lose. We're on the road. If we get out of this, 2-0 with 2 wins, you know what I mean? With two wins that are sorry about that. All right. Sorry about that. I forgot to put my phone on do not disturb, and all of a sudden I started getting interference. So let's say this. If you get out of 2 road games to start the season 2-0, isn't that the goal? And especially given their quarterback situation, I guarantee you the Steelers decided that Bo Nix is not going to beat us. He's just not. So let's try and, get a little bit of a lead early, which they did, and almost play keep away the entire second half. And, it almost cost them. Denver got that big flea flicker or whatever it was for a big long play. And then, of course, they bailed them out with an interception. To be honest, they basically looked to me like an offense that really just decided today that if we get a little bit of a lead, we're just not going to let Bo Nix beat us, period. And you can do that when your defense is that good and when the other team's offense is that bad. Will it work? Is it sustainable long term? Probably not. But early in the season, when you're still trying to figure out your tackle position, you're still trying to figure out your quarterback position, you're still trying to figure out your second receiver position, you know what? Get the W. That's all that matters. You'd rather be 2-0 than 0-2. So I don't know where it goes from here. My inclination is that I don't think Denver's defense is great. And so that's a concerning part of this. But as long as you've got Justin Fields playing quarterback, they've done everything in their power to make sure that they don't put him in a bad situation, right? I mean, he hasn't thrown an interception, I don't think, yet, right, in either of the 2 games. He's not putting them in a bad situation. He's not putting them anywhere where their defense can't recover. So, to me, I don't know. That seemed to be the game plan. The flip side of it, Adam, is maybe they're just not very good on offense. Maybe their offense is just not going to be very good.
And I'll say this, Paul, people are already pointing out in the chat the penalties if there were some of these penalties did not get called, like they weren't seemingly called for Denver late in the game when the Steelers pass rush was just getting to them over and over again, then maybe we're having a different conversation. Maybe you have more explosive plays. Maybe you have more points. We're going to dig into all of that. Before we do, just want to thank our sponsor here at the top of the show. It's Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Let's narrow the focus here, Paul, onto Justin Fields specifically. Finishes the day 13 for 20, 117 yards. Averages 5.9 yards per attempt, the 1 touchdown, no interceptions, took 2 sacks, finishes with a QB rating of 97.3, which I think you would have taken a lot of times last season. It's just the way it started and the way it ended were, I think, two different things. Missed some passes, and then, like we said, had some nice plays wiped out that were not his fault. How do you assess him individually in this game?
Justin Fields?
Yeah.
I mean, Adam, he's effective. In terms of the context of what they want him to do, he's been effective. He's not turned it over, which is a really low bar to achieve. He's used his legs wisely, which is what they want him to do. And he's made a couple of plays, big plays on third downs to, move the chains and give him a chance. So at the end of the day, I give him kind of a C+, B- kind of grade, because I think he's doing exactly what they want him to do. I think he's doing it in the way they want him to do it. I think he's doing it exactly the way it needs to be done. So now the next step is, okay, now you're at home next week. Are we going to give you a little bit more to do? That's going to be, to me, the telltale sign of what happens here. Are they going to be able to build on what he's done and make it better? That's the question I have.
Yeah, I think that's the question a lot of people are asking, and I think it was another game with very few throws across the middle of the field. For you to believe in this guy as I'm not going to call him the franchise quarterback of the future potentially. I don't think we're nearly at that point yet, but a guy who has a future in Pittsburgh as a starting quarterback past this season. Do you need to see him throw more across the middle of the field, or do you look at the results they're getting and question whether people are glamorizing those throws in the middle of the field relative to the results you're getting, was just winning to this point?
Yeah, winning is all that matters, really. Winning is all that really matters. And so, to me, if you look at it that way, winning is the most important thing. And so, you know what? Hasn't been pretty. Hasn't really worked well for them. Hasn't really done a whole lot of different things in terms of them getting up and down the field and getting a lot of yards and putting points on the board. But it is effective. And again, if you got Bo Nix on the other side, why are you going to try and take chances and do anything that you don't have to do to put the ball in danger? So I know people are frustrated because it's not always fun to watch. You know what I'm saying? But to me, it's just important to note that that's the way it goes. It's important to note that if you're the Steelers, you care about winning the football game and you want to do whatever you can do to win it.
Yeah, and they did do that, and your point is well taken about Bo Nix. Obviously, one of my favorite targets of just a loser at every big stage of his career. Obviously, he's beaten the Idaho States and random Pac-12 teams and random SEC teams for his whole career, but looked terrific today. So I think that approach, to dealing with him was sound, and then you keep building things in. I think let's get to this question before we talk about the offensive line. If Russ is healthy this week, Paul, are you going to Russ? Do you want to see what the Steelers have with Russ, or are you sticking with Justin Fields just because you're 2-0 and it's kind of like we talked a little bit about last week? You look at this as kind of a Marc-Andre Fleury in the 2017 playoffs for the Penguins, where it's his net until he proves otherwise.
I think I would go with Justin Fields, Adam. And the reason I would go with Justin Fields is very simple to me. You have 2 games with him. There's a rhythm, on some level. I think you've started to structure the offense around what he can do well. The running game, is a big part of what they try and do. And I think he helps that. He complements that. I just think that, at this point, it's his team or it's not. And, Russell Wilson not playing for 2 weeks, then you put him in, they're going to play a completely different style of football. He hasn't played in a long, long time. I don't know. I just think that it's one of those things where I would probably stick with Justin Fields, even though they've only had one touchdown in 2 games. I get it. I think that it gives them the best chance to win.
Yeah, and obviously it's still a huge if in terms of whether Russ is going to be healthy. There's been conversation. I mean, Christian McCaffrey just got placed on IR, dealing with similar like calf issues and stuff. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a given that you're going to have Russ healthy next week. It's just a question I think you got to ask at each stage along this journey here. As long as you got 2 guys that have reasonable claims to the starting quarterback job. Paul, the offensive line gets called for a ton of penalties, as we talked about earlier in the show. Wipes out some nice plays, a deep ball to Pickens that likely would have resulted in at least 3 points. Broderick Jones gets benched. Troy Fautanu comes in. Dan Moore Jr. gets called for a holding penalty. What was your read on what went on with the offensive line today on the whole? And then we can talk about individuals.
The offensive line was one of the things is they moved Broderick Jones in and Troy Fautanu in it a little bit. They played some musical chairs a little bit. I thought the offensive line for the most part was okay. They had too many penalties. Obviously, they did too many things wrong. It was one of these things where I just felt like when you look at it from afar, they've got to be more clean. They can't have so many penalties, and I thought that there was, they allowed some pressures. And let me look. I've been trying to pull up the box score here. The Steelers ran 3.9 yards per carry, 69 yards for Najee Harris. I mean, they ran it okay. I didn't think they were able to get tough yards like they have been the last week, but they ran it okay. I think the offensive line, Adam, as we said, is a work in progress. I'll wait till after week 4 before I really decide if it's got a chance to be a really good offensive line or not. But today, too many penalties.
Are you worried about Broderick Jones individually, or do you look at him and say, look, I mean, when they drafted him, you knew that there was going to be some development required. They've moved him around so much, kind of messed with him. He hasn't had a chance to kind of find his niche yet. I guess scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about him as a long-term piece of this offensive line?
Well, I mean, I think that, again, you have a young guy that you're moving around and he's not sure where he's going to be and where his final resting place is. And, he's kind of practiced, he's kind of played on one side and now you're trying to move him to the other side. And yeah, I just think it's going to take time. I know that I read all the stories. Well, he's a guy that is able to, he's a guy that's able to, because who he is and all that, he's able to quickly move and he's a fast learner and all that stuff. I just think it's going to take time. I think what they needed to do from day one, and you and I talked about this on, the other show, from day one, they needed to put Broderick Jones at left tackle and Troy Fautanu at right tackle and just say, this is what we're going to do, period. And if one of them, like Fautanu, got hurt for a little bit during training camp, put Dan Moore at the right side. But do everything in your power to set it up so that you get as many reps at left tackle for one and as many reps as at right tackle for the other. That's what they need to do.
What did you think of Troy Fautanu in his first extended action today?
I think he was, I think he was okay. I mean, it was his first action. Again, I think he had at least one of the penalties. I thought he did some good things in terms of not, because a lot of times what happens when you got a young tackle like that is they make mistakes that aren't penalties, but they make mistakes that cause either the quarterback to get hit or whatever. And I didn't think he did that. I didn't think he had any many breakdowns or whatever. So I feel like he played pretty well for his first game. And again, I don't understand why the plan wasn't Broderick Jones at left tackle from day one, and let's go from there.
Darnell Washington scores the first and now to this point still only touchdown of the season. Were you surprised considering his pass catching regimen here in Pittsburgh has not been top flight? And do you think it's possible we're going to see more of him in the red zone this year?
I mean, he's a big dude, isn't he? He's a very big man, and that makes him really dangerous in the red zone. I've been saying it since they got him. He can become a force for them down there. And quite frankly, I think because of how they're made up, they need someone to step forward and be a force. Period. And that's what I would tell you, that's what I liked about that touchdown. He's a guy that to me is a matchup problem. Now all of a sudden, you've got to really think about it from the standpoint of, could he become that guy? Yeah, probably he could, because I think, you got to worry about Pickens. You got to worry about Freiermuth. I'm sure we're going to get to the receivers, which are just a disaster. But
our favorite segment coming up.
Yes, but at the end of the day, they need somebody else to step up like that.
Yeah, let's get to the receivers, Paul. George Pickens, I think, had one of the best games you'll ever see wiped out by penalties. Ends up with, 2 catches for 29 yards, which really does not accurately, to me, describe the impact that he had on this game. I thought he played a great game. He made the plays. They just ended up not counting. The guys beyond him, again, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, the only wide receivers targeted other than George Pickens. They combine for 3 catches for 20 yards on 5 targets. Even if you include Pickens' number, and I don't want to come across as criticizing Pickens because I thought he played a good game. Still, though, in the box score, Steelers wide receivers had 49 yards on, 5 catches. Your thoughts on that level of production?
Well, I think that Van Jefferson is terrible. I think he's bad, right? I don't think he's good. Do you think he's good?
No.
I mean, Calvin Austin, I think he had a catch that was called back, but I'm just looking at the rest of the guys that they have just aren't good enough. We saw that in the preseason. You and I sat here and talked about how they weren't getting open. They weren't creating space for themselves. They weren't dangerous. So I'm not sure why we're surprised, Adam. Are you surprised?
Van Jefferson did get that one PI call that ended up being pretty significant. So you do have to put that one. But listen, I mean, the job is to catch the ball, and they're not catching a lot of balls. To be fair, also, I mean, you only have 20 pass attempts on the day from Justin Fields. If you send 4 of them Freiermuth's way, that leaves 16. So it's not like there was a huge volume, but man, it's just hard to conceive of an offense being effective when the stats are that low. I'm not asking Van Jefferson to go out and put up 100 yards every week, but it's grim if you look at these box scores, Paul.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you what else is disappointing. How do you only have 4 targets for George Pickens? I mean, I don't care what they're doing on defense. You've got to have more than 4 targets for him. I mean, you had as many targets for him as you did Pat Freiermuth. And, I love Pat, and I think he's a good player and all that good stuff. What are we talking about here? You know what I mean? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. And again, when you talk about ugly things, it really is hard to just shake the 1 touchdown in 2 weeks. Obviously, I think the Steelers did a nice job of being patient and letting these, the Falcons and then the Broncos today kind of combust. Man, the Broncos looked like a mess, didn't they, Paul? I mean, they look at the level of hopelessness offensively that the Steelers were at last year. I don't know how much further ahead the Steelers are, but it still seems night and day compared to what the Broncos were doing. Piled up some stats against prevent defense late, but in all the weighty downs that mattered for 50 minutes of this game, they were crap.
There was never a period of time in this game that I thought Bo Nix would be able to drive them down for a touchdown. Not once. And even when they threw, I do the chat during the game, even when they threw the flea flicker or whatever it was, long pass. And, of course, the people on the chat were very rational about that play. I basically said they still have to score a touchdown because I didn't believe that they could get 6 more yards or whatever it was. I think they were on the 6-yard line. Whatever. It was even their 3-yard line. I didn't believe they could get that many yards. So to me, I look at it like that, and I basically say, I think Bo Nix is terrible, and I think that offense is really bad. And I think Sean Payton's just arrogant enough that he really believed that he could have the 3 quarterbacks he has and that he would be able to figure it out and scheme his way to being good. So, the Steelers are at least a little bit effective. Very little, but a little bit effective. But, boy, you take a bad offense in Denver and put them against the Steelers defense. And I got to be honest with you. it was a bad combination for Denver.
I'd like to share an email I got this week based on the article I wrote about the Broncos, pointing out that Bo Nix is 24 years old and has never won a big game in his life. I had a Denver fan, apparently, named Mike. I won't give his last name, but he wrote to me, apparently you weren't alive when John Elway was benched at halftime in his first NFL start. Just in case you don't know, he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. But you go ahead with your criticism of Bo Nix. Keep displaying your ignorance. You might want to look for a line of work where there is ignorance, where ignorance is virtue. Oh, wait a minute, you're already doing that, Mike. I don't know if I'm the ignorant one. Paul, you tell me. I thought that looked pretty rough today.
Yeah, he was bad, absolutely bad. The thing about it was there was a number of times when he had plays that were there to be made. He just couldn't make the throw. Right? Yeah. He had at least that I can think of 2, maybe even 3 deep passes where guys were wide open and he couldn't get it to him. He overthrew it, didn't give him a chance to catch the ball. So that's the biggest problem that I see with it.
Well, let's stop talking about what Bo Nix did bad. Let's get into what the Steelers did well. Before we do, let's just thank another sponsor, Goldberg, Persky & White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Paul, I want to start with Deshaun Elliott on the list of shout-outs here on the defense. Just a dominant day from that group. He had that 1 3rd-and-1 stick on the ball carrier, forces a punt. He obviously had the interception last week, had his fingerprints all over that one as well. Is he up there in one of the more underrated impact free agent signings the Steelers have made in the last, I don't know, dozen years?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been much better than I thought he would be. I mean, I figured he could be a player that could give them, maybe, a little bit of a spark. But, I mean, Adam, did you think he would be this good? Did you have any idea he'd be this good?
No, I mean, I thought he could be a serviceable safety. I guess right. my baseline was DeMonte KZ, right? And I think he's clearly been better than that.
Right. There's no question about it. But I think the other part of it is he's become a really important player for their defense. And I didn't think that would be the case, but he makes plays, man. He shows up. He's the guy who shows up and makes plays. And I was trying to pull up the stats here real quick. I think, you look at what he's done and you say to yourself, did anybody really believe he'd be this guy when they got him? And I have to tell you, probably not. Hang on. I'm trying to pull up his stats right here.
He was the leading tackler for the Steelers.
Yeah, nine tackles. Yes, 9 tackles. I thought he had at least 1 pass defense. I was surprised seeing that he didn't, but 9 tackles, 4 of them solo. I think he's obviously adequately answered a lot of questions about the safety position, not named Minkah Fitzpatrick. And now you add that. I'm still not ready to go crazy with Dante Jackson and some of the other guys that have played corner yet. They've played bad quarterbacks and not great receivers either. So let's wait on that. But I think that it's pretty clear Deshaun Elliott is going to be a pretty good impact player the whole entire season.
Yeah, got him cheap, and I think he's exceeding a lot of expectations. Another guy in the secondary that had a big game, Corey Trice, gets what proves to be the game-deciding interception down in the red zone. That's a big deal to me, Paul, and the question of how useful this guy can be for the Steelers. That wasn't it wasn't a pick in the early third quarter when you're in a sub package and it's a 2-possession game. That was with the game on the line. He makes a huge play. How confident are you becoming that the Steelers have found a player here? I'm not going to call him a Pro Bowler, but considering their difficulty developing corners over the years, I think it's a huge development that he's playing well here early on.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing. I just caution you to say, let's wait till they play against better quarterbacks and better receivers before we really start to try and assess what was going on or what's going on at that position. Because Joey Porter, for instance, I think that he has really sort of developed into a pretty good player. But I also think that he gets some penalties. He gets handsy, and I think he's getting a reputation of getting a little handsy. So I'm interested to see this secondary play against a quarterback who's who's competent. Last week they played against a guy who's 90 years old and with a bad leg, and they just overwhelmed their offensive line and he couldn't do anything. This week they just played against a bad quarterback. So, next week you got to believe Justin Herbert's better than these two guys. And the offensive line is a little better, there. So let's see what happens if when they have to play against the actual competition on the outside like that.
Yes, I did want to get into Joey Porter a little bit, Paul. Had multiple penalties late today, has developed sort of this reputation. Do you look at him and say that you take the good and the bad and that he's shutting down number one receivers? When you look at the stat line at the end of the day, what do we have for Cortland Sutton here? 1 catch for 26 yards on 4 targets. I mean, that's pretty good, Paul. Do you look at that and say that the penalties are worth that? Or do you have a level of concern about them?
Yeah. I think I have a level of concern about them because I think that if he develops a reputation of getting a little handsy, there could be key plays where he makes a play and he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. I get it. He's a physical player. He's a physical corner. That's how he plays. And I'm okay with that. But he's got to do a better job of like selling or keeping his hands off receivers in order to make that happen, because I just have a fear that there's going to be a key play in a game that he gets called for that, and it cost him. So I think he's a good player. I think he's a physical player. I like him, but he's got to clean that up a little bit.
Kind of another quiet day for Patrick Queen in the box score, Paul. There's been some murmurs about maybe he's dealing with some level of injury. What's your read on the situation with him? And is he ultimately doing the job when you give up 6 points, and are we maybe splitting hairs here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can remember at least 2 of his tackles. Neither of them are really high impact plays, but clearly the defense as a whole is getting it done. So, the one play he made, he just kind of went sideways and made a standard, tackle from an inside linebacker at the second level. He had another tackle that he was in on, but, I mean, he hasn't done anything spectacular. By the same token, I don't know that he's hurt them. So he's a guy. Let's see what happens as they go through this a little bit at a time.
Yeah, and I mean, considering that position has at different points in time in the last 5 years been a gaping hole, Paul, I think the less you notice Patrick Queen, that's probably setting a higher baseline than when, where they've been. Maybe he's not making the spectacular plays that you would expect a guy to be making that much money to be making, but it's certainly better than they were in the days of Devin Bush and the likes of him.
Well, I think that, as a whole, with him and Landon Roberts and Peyton Wilson, I think as a whole that this is the best group of inside linebackers they've had in a while. So yeah, it's good.
Speaking of good things, Paul, I think the MVP of the game for the Steelers might have been Corliss Waitman, coming in cold. Was not even on the roster a week ago. 8 boots for 424 yards of punting. That's an average of 53 yards per punt. He pinned 2 inside the 20. 3 touchbacks along a 58. Where's he been the whole time, Paul? Through all the years of Percy Harvin, and you go out and you get Cameron Johnston. If he punts like that every week, they're going to be just fine on special teams. Yeah,
I mean, I think really, if you think about it, him and the guy they had last week are 10 times better than Presley Harvin. And so I was trying to figure out here. I was trying to figure out but again, and we've talked about this a lot, when you're going, 53 yards, 424 total yards with his punts, 3 touchbacks, 2 inside the 20 along the 58. Isn't it true? I mean, it's true to me. I think if you're going to play the way the Steelers want to play, if you're going to play that style of football, guess what? You better win the kicking game. And, it's a cliche and everything else, but you better win the kicking game.
Yeah, interesting the way that went. Paul, we had a lot of new people join us in the time since we were talking about Justin Fields in the offense, so I'm going to get you out of here on this. What are your thoughts on the way that the offense and Justin Fields played today? Just kind of sum up the conversation we had earlier.
Well, I think the thing about it is it looked to me, Adam, like they played not to lose. Or I hate that phrase, actually. Let me say it better, okay? It looked to me like their game plan was get a little bit of a lead and then don't put the defense in a bad situation. Get a little bit of a lead and then be content to, not turn it over and punt. And I think that there's a lot of people who are upset by that. There are a lot of people who are saying, well, they need to do better. They need to do this. They need to be more high-powered. This isn't going to work against the Chiefs. Look, it's just basically one of these situations where you 2-0 with 2 road games. And you did it because you didn't put your defense in a bad situation. You let your offense be efficient enough to score enough points to win. And you were okay with the fact that Justin Fields just don't turn the ball over. They had one drive where they went 12 plays, 80 yards, whatever it was. They scored a touchdown, and I said as soon as they got up 7-0, this game might be over because I don't know that Denver's going to score in this game. And so there are people that were upset because, they ran a draw on 3rd and 18 backed up, or what was it, 3rd and 17 or whatever it was, backed up in their own end zone, and they ran a draw, right? Well, the thing about it is, why would you throw the ball there? Why would you put yourself in a bad position there? Be content to get a couple of yards and punt it. And if you throw it and they get an interception, now they're inside the 15 or 20. I'll say one other thing real quick. These guys make millions and millions and millions of dollars, okay? When the Broncos got the ball back with 4 minutes and 45 seconds left, down 13-3, he only had one timeout. A, they didn't exactly have a sense of urgency, but B, they needed to, when they got to the point where there was 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, they were in field goal range. They needed to kick the field goal right there. That way, they could kick the ball off. Steelers' first down play is say with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, right? They call a timeout. Now they run a second down play. Now it's the 2-minute warning. So now when they get the ball back, right, there's 1 minute and 20 seconds left as opposed to 15 seconds left. By letting it go all the way down beyond the 2-minute warning and then having to, kick the field goal, you basically wasted a timeout. I mean, it was egregiously bad. People say, well, why would you kick the field goal first? Well, you need the 10 points. And with 3 minutes or less, you're only going to get 2 possessions. So you might as well kick the field goal now and give yourself a chance to kick later or to try and score a touchdown later. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
The entire fourth quarter was a mess from a Denver perspective, Paul, because you kick the field goal with 10 minutes left, and there's a growing joke on Twitter. You kick a field goal, you go from a two possession game to a 2-possession game, and that was as close as they got. I mean, they should have gone for a touchdown on that drive. They should have gone for a touchdown on the other drive, and they would have won the game just on those 2 decisions. Now, if you lose, then at least you can say at the end of the day, you went for it and you lost, but. Yeah, the clock management, I don't know. People complain about Mike Tomlin, but that was dreadful from Sean Payton, who's supposed to be a genius. Paul, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, I think we covered all the ground, and I think we did it in a pretty good way. But, people that want to say this offense is never going to be able to win against the Chiefs or the, who else is good? The Texans or whatever. I don't believe that this is the offense that's going to be the finished product at the end of the year. I think they just wanted to survive 2 games on the road early. You know what I mean? And then go and see if they can build on it now.
Yeah, I agree. You're 2-0. Ultimately, more good than bad, with that being the case. I think next week's going to be an important test. If you're at home, can you show more at home against I think as long as the Chargers have Justin Herbert at quarterback, they're a decent team. So will be interesting to see how that unfolds. Paul, thank you for joining me this evening. Thank you for everyone. We've had a great audience tonight. Lively chat. Make sure you subscribe. If you're just here for the first time, subscribe to our channel. We got a lot more Steelers content coming to you. Our beat writers in Denver will be having their post-game video thrown up in a little bit. We're going to have interviews from the locker room. Christopher Carter will be back with the North Shore Drive Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week, talking plenty Steelers with Ray Fittipaldo and Brian Bacco. Paul and I will be back on Thursday. So lots coming at you. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.